Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy, and I am back with an additional review of the Hobbit Tarot, and this is going to focus on chronology within this and the lack of chronology. Now, it was clear with the first walkthrough that certainly not everything was chronological, which is fine. But what I decided to do is to reread the book. So I reread the book, and as I was reading through, I chose the cards that depicted specific scenes. Now, I've started a post on my website. It's not live yet because I haven't finished it. In that post, so when I do put that up, I will put it in the information box below the video. It goes through all of the cards as I see them chronologically. So, and I have the aid of this guidebook, which tells you what this is intended to be a picture of. Okay. So that hopefully will be helpful for anybody else who... Oh, I always have to yawn. It's like, if I ever feel like I need to yawn, I should just turn on the camera. Anyway, anybody else who should feel the need to put this in order, just to have a sense. And part of the reason I did that was I couldn't remember some of the major events of the story and whether they came first or second, goblins first, or, I guess I think I was thinking that they encountered the goblins in Lonesome Mountain instead of in the Misty Mountains and all of this stuff, and various things. So it was useful to me just to remember the story. And part of the reason I wanted to remember the story and the sequence of the story was so that if I'm using this deck and I get, because this is specifically a deck about a journey, it is there and back again, right? So if I'm doing a spread, if I see a sequence moving me from the goblins to Bjorn or something like that, to me that adds some dimension to the cards I'm looking at. Okay, well then I'm headed in the right direction, or this is headed in a proper sequence. Whereas if it shows the goblins and then maybe Elrond, then maybe I should be thinking, maybe it's telling me I need to go back, need to consult a prior counselor of some kind or something. So there you go. One of the things that I was reminded of as I went into the book was, and this is very true, of course, of a lot of fantasy, is that there is this sense of destiny. This sense of destiny, which is not something that we generally think of anymore. We focus more on free will. And, that things, and even Gandalf doesn't know exactly how things are going to come out, but he kind of knows. He's not the Temperance card in here, and I really don't understand why they chose the card that they did here, but he could be easily a Temperance, because it's like he knows that these are the ingredients that he needs to get together. He can't control everything, but he knows that these are the things he needs to get together. Rufus, go back. Go back under the table. Good boy. Yes, step on the little dog while you're at it. And this immediately comes to mind because I would call this the first card of the deck. It's the High Priestess. So in this deck, the High Priestess is not a person, is not There's no fortune-telling aspect to it. This is intended to be the old tale, the old book that says that something is preordained to happen in the future. So this is the tale, this is the story. So to me, this is the first. This is the primary thing. This is the story. And then one of the things I became a little disillusioned about is how many times they use certain characters in here instead of a wider variety. You know, it's easy to criticize, right? It's easy to criticize. With some of this I don't get. And unfortunately there are some instances in here where it's flat out wrong. It might be correct in the guidebook, but the image doesn't match the guidebook. And apparently nobody checked this. You know, and this person, and there's one, really only one card that I saw that was really flat out wrong. It didn't happen in the story. But this is Terry Donaldson who wrote about it, and this is the same person who did the Lord of the Rings Oracle. The Lord of the Rings Oracle, which I have over here, but a different artist. And I do like how things have been written up in that. But there's just sort of there are areas where there are disconnects in here, and some oddnesses, and I've sort of reconciled myself to them for the most part. But having gone through this process makes me a little bit more uneasy about the deck. And so I'm sort of going to have to get over that. And I do feel like I need to give it some time to get over that and see if I can just use the deck without my analytical, critical mind interfering and saying, oh, I can't believe they did that or made that mistake or did this or that. Anyway, so what I have here, actually, I think there's 9, and I call them kind of archetypal cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They're actually kind of character cards. I almost think of them as, like in a play, how you might have a little paragraph. If it's the written part of the play, the script, you might have a little scene-setting paragraph, and then you have a list of all of the important characters. That's what these cards strike me as being. So you have, all right, we have a story here, this preordained story from the past. Okay, then we have this important character here. This is Gandalf as the leader, also as the one who is communing, you know, as the kind of the all-knowing Gandalf who has his finger in a lot of pies, you might say. Then this Lovers is actually Bilbo's parents. And I can get that because they are opposites. They are opposites because that's Belladonna Took, so she's got the Tookish adventurous spirits, and then there's the Baggins, you know, the more normal hobbits, not wanting to do anything out of the ordinary. So, you know, that opposites attract thing is in that. Now, these people these hobbits don't feature in this story except as a footnote to Bilbo's history and why he would ever even begin to take a step out his door when these dwarves show up. This 10 of Coins. When I read this, after I got done with the book and was looking, because there's lots of treasure pictures, and none of them are terribly realistic, but, well, one of them is, kind of. Anyway, this one, when I read it, is really kind of an archetypal treasure and our response to treasure. It probably would be even better as a 4 of Pentacles than a 10 of Pentacles, except obviously this is a 10, right? This is a huge treasure. And So in the guidebook, this is simply about people's response to this level of abundance. And does have some interesting and worthwhile things to say about it. And, you know, overall, this being a journey essentially of dwarves with a hobbit who lives under the earth, and the dragon in the earth, and Gollum in the earth, and the goblins in the earth, it is a lot about, it's very earthy, and it is about seeking treasure. It is about wanting things to some extent. It's also about, of course, Bilbo's personal development and understanding his own abilities. But it is a lot also about values and how we value things. And so I started to wonder about whether this deck would work well for, maybe not, I don't know, directly career oriented, but kind of financial. Zippy, what are you doing? Come here. That's a good dog. That's a good dog. Sorry. Apparently when I talk, they're starting to get like, okay, we're going to leave now. And this one I don't want to leave. I might have to get up and close the door. Okay. So this Six of Cups. Initially I had it in the sequence where, you know, Bilbo encounters Gollum in the Misty Mountains. But this is not in that sequence, because this is Gollum with his ring. So this is Gollum, this is the Six of Cups. And so essentially in this story, and they're bringing in, you know, we don't know everything about Gollum in this story. We learn about Gollum in The Lord of the Rings. We learn much more about him. But the author couldn't resist, you know. There are this next card I have in my hand is him not being able to resist going to the other parts of the story. And even though it shows him looking at his ring under the mountains, in The Hobbit, he never has the ring in his possession. So this does not happen here. So this is in theory. This is like before they ever ended up coming into the Misty Mountains. So this is like an in-between time for Gollum. So it's essentially a card of, you know, it's not about the chronology of the story. It's a card about how you get caught up in the past or trapped by the past, essentially. And then this I just don't get. I mean, couldn't you have used an elven maiden or something? Or I know that, again, this story is a very male story. It was created by a man who was writing it for his boys, right? And it is painful in here. Their attempts to come up with queens is really painful, as you will see. But for some reason there are no elven women. They have 2 women from Lake Town and Goldberry. This is Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, which they say they're not directly mentioned in this story. Well, they don't occur in this story at all. Do they exist in Middle Earth at this time? Yes, but they have nothing to do with this story. Nothing. So it's like, but anyway, that's the star card. Yes, no, it isn't the star card. It's what I think should be the star card. It is the Queen of Cups. You know, Goldberry can't be the Queen of Cups because she's not a normal person. So, I don't know. But anyway, there's Goldberry. And then there's the Moon card, which is actually sort of about being haunted by past deeds. So this is a card, and so it's like, why do we need this and that Six of Cups? Why not just one or the other? And, you know, the Six of Cups could be one of the many, many times that Bilbo is wishing he were back in his hobbit hole. You know, fixing tea instead of on an uncomfortable adventure. At any rate, it's worthwhile as a moon card, but did we need that for Gollum? And there's more Gollum cards in here. There's two more that I reserved for the chronology here. Okay, so we have Thorin as the strength card, which is okay. I can live with that. I mean, really, in this, and I also wondered if they weren't being influenced by the movie, but I don't know if the movie was even out at this time. I think it was published in 2012, and I don't remember when the movie was published, came out. I think it was only recently. It was only a couple of, I'm getting old, so I don't know, but I thought it was only a couple of years ago. But I could be wrong. I didn't go and see it because I could see some of the changes that were being made just in the previews, and I didn't like it. So the dwarves are not terribly admirable. They're not terribly, it's not like they're bad, but they're not terribly admirable. I mean, they're essentially a setup to give Bilbo, in this, as a story, they're a setup to give Bilbo an opportunity to learn who he can be, all of the aspects of his character. And so, I mean, I can live with, certainly dwarves as being strong. I can live with this. I can live with this Thorin. Is it Thorin? Why am I? Anyway, Oakenshield. This I can live with as strength. This I have much more trouble with. This is Thorin. Okay, so in this deck, these two are Thorin. How can that be? All right. The only way I can reconcile that is if this is a younger version of him. But there's no basis, there's no stories that talk about him as some incredible warrior. And he doesn't even look like a dwarf here, except he's hairy. Anyway, so I have some problems. Maybe I should just take that one out. What is that? The King of Swords. So I'm guessing it's supposed to be him in his younger days or something. The guidebook is not particularly helpful in that regard. It makes him into some kind of great warrior, and there's just, no. I'm sorry. Okay, so that was the King of Swords. I thought we had a bunch of the kings in here. Yeah, we have two more kings here. So we have the king, or no, it's the knight. I wonder if I messed that up. The queen, I think I did. King of Swords, King of Wands. King of Wands is the King of the Eagles. And this card is just about the eagles generally. We actually have, I think, 2 or 3 more cards with the eagles on them. So this one I just thought will be, this is just kind of a general. It doesn't say anything. He's not doing anything specific here. So I'm just the King of the Air. And they call it King of Wands, would be the King of Fire, but anyway. And then the Knight of Cups. And I might be able to insert him somewhere, actually. This is it Balin? The one who most befriends Bilbo. And as the Knight of Cups. And so I might be able to insert him somewhere where perhaps the first time that he does something in particular for Bilbo might be that he carries him on his back. Is that the first time? Carries him on his back when they're escaping the goblins, maybe. Okay, so now we're entering, at 20 minutes, we're entering the chronology proper, and so this might go a little bit faster. But there's still a lot of cards to go, so this could be a little bit of a long one. Two of Cups. This is Gandalf showing up at Bilbo's door. And then Two of Coins is the first two dwarves showing up at Bilbo's door. This is Bilbo feeling like he has to go meet the dwarves. It's been agreed on, and he feels this obligation that he can't let go of. So they're starting. They're starting off, and so they have left earlier, and so he's having to go catch up with them. He does. They're off, and then they have the encounter with the trolls. Now, the card that didn't make any sense was a card that was, and it was the Four of Swords, I think, that was supposed to be the dwarves running away from the trolls. Well, that never happens. So, anyway, some people might want to insert that in here, but it just doesn't happen. This is Gandalf, him as the magician, oddly enough, but he looks more Four of Cups-ish. And he is, at this stage, he is not with them when they meet the trolls. And when he comes back, he says something to the effect that he was looking ahead. And then they said, well, why did you come back? And he said, well, I looked behind. You know, so he was doing something along these lines when during the whole troll thing, and came back to aid them, and turned, you know, and confounded the trolls until the sun rose and turned them to stone, and then released everybody. And in the trolls' horde, they got the three swords, one for Thorin, one for Bilbo, and one for Gandalf. And then Gandalf leads them onward in the direction, he does a lot of leading them in the direction of Rivendell. This is Rivendell. They're arriving at Rivendell. It's not a very appealing looking forest, but anyway. Rivendell, this is Elrond. He consults with them. This is, I can't remember what they call it, moonwriting or something, and I put this here. It could be in more than one place, but I put it here because it was Elrond who discovered that it was moonwriting and showed them, or told them what they had to do to read it completely. So this is the key to understanding how to get in the back entrance, the secret entrance into Lonesome Mountain. Is it Lonesome Mountain or Lonely Mountain? Lonesome Mountain? What is it? Lonely Mountain. This is a different stone troll. So this is the stone trolls up in the Misty Mountains, and you see the storm there in the background. They're supposedly having, and this is the Nine of Wands, they're supposedly having a battle up there, and that's part of the reason it creates a storm, and it's part of the reason that they have to shelter in a cave. So it makes sense for the Nine of Wands, because it forces them to shelter in a cave, which then ends up with them being abducted, captured, captured by the goblins. Captured by the goblins. And so the dwarves are captured by the goblins, but Gandalf isn't, and Gandalf comes to the rescue. This is kind of a weird card, where it doesn't look like they're being rescued quite, but Gandalf is supposed to be rescuing them there. And this is Thorin's sword, Orcrist, and this is what kills. This is the death card. This is what kills the king of the goblins. Where's the Ace of Swords? Yes. Orcrist. Thorin's sword. I guess it just says it's the Goblin King. Okay. Doesn't have his name necessarily. Anyway. The killing of the Goblin King, which I believe was... Now I'm starting to doubt myself whether it was Gandalf or Thorin that killed him, but it made the goblins really mad. There's death. Ah, they just call him the Great Goblin in here. Here it says that it was actually it was Gandalf who killed the Great Goblin. So it was Orcrist. Whoops. I don't know. I'm going to have to look in the book just to double check on this one. That scared the goblins enough to back off. Can I suddenly go? Almost. Anyway, alright. Well, they're running here. Of course, I'm practically on the spot. It's got to be within those next pages, but I can't lay my eyes on it, so we'll continue. Here they are trying to work their way through the tunnels after they've escaped and scattered the goblins because of having killed their leader. And so the goblins nab. You'd think that would be like a Seven of Swords moment. But the goblins managed to sneak up behind the dwarves and grab, I guess it was Balin anyway, and that's when Bilbo falls off and is knocked out and is lost in the cave, and then he encounters the strange creature Gollum. And they have their riddling contest, which I had totally forgotten about that. Their riddling contest, which to me that's the Wheel of Fortune, and you see Bilbo speaking there, attempting to reason with him. And then you miss all of his sneaking out and all of that stuff, and suddenly we're in the trees with the wargs. This is another thing. Bilbo never swung through the trees like that. No. He was lucky to manage to get up into a tree. So, yes. And here's Gandalf again with his flaming... And this could go either place. It could go in this particular place. It could also go up in the cave. He could have done this. But I put it here because of the emphasis on the flames coming from the staff. And he sets the wargs on fire, and in the process sets the whole area on fire, and that ends up threatening the whole everybody. Not only the wargs, but everybody. And I think in the guidebook this says that it's Bilbo and Gandalf. And it's not. And in fact, in the story, it sounds like everybody went up a separate tree. There's not two people in the same tree. And they are rescued from the wargs and the fire by the eagles. And the eagles take them within range of Beorn, so that they, Gandalf decides to go visit Beorn. And this is Beorn in his bear form. Now, this is another card where you might have, I would have given this, I think, more status than the Page of Coins, frankly, but I'm not going to quibble over that too much. In fact, if I keep this deck, who knows, maybe I'll end up taking off the tarot associations on them. They're not that helpful. But this could also be put in the Battle of Five Armies because of the ferociousness of this. This could be a card put in the Battle of Five Armies where he appeared as a bear. They didn't see him as a bear until that time. And this, there's no particular place. This is just them resting. And I thought, well, they spent some time. This could be when they spend some time with, in Rivendell. They spend some time at Beorn's and relax and rejuvenate. So that's just where I chose to put it. I don't think I can check. I might as well, but I think it's just a very generally stated card. And the sun, it's just showing the sun. I remember this in the guidebook. It's not a specific situation. It's just except a sunrise. The hopefulness of a sunrise. The relief, in many cases here, of a sunrise. So let me look up the Three of Cups. So it says, here in the midst of the woods, the companions take the weight off their feet and try to relax. Around them, but out of sight, are the sounds of the forest creatures coming to life. So if it's in a forest, it's more likely to be Rivendell. But I don't know. Next on the agenda is a nice fire around which... it really has nothing to do. It's extremely general. So it's kind of in theory. In theory, surely they had nights like this. The Chariot. There are 2 times that they are given ponies. 3 times that they are given ponies. They're given them out of Rivendell. They're given them by Beorn, and they're given them by the people of Lake Town. And I chose make this them heading north away from Bjorn. But it doesn't have to be. There are those other times that it could be. With the mountains in the background. This is the Chariot. Okay, according to the guidebook, that's Lonely Mountain in the background. So, according to the guidebook, this would be more appropriate to be after Lake Town, going from Lake Town up to Lonely Mountain. This is starting to head into Mirkwood. This is crossing the enchanted stream, supposedly in Mirkwood, even though there's no woods there. It could conceivably also be them coming off of the Carrack. But I think it's the idea of crossing and not getting their feet wet is important here. 8 of coins. Yeah, the Dark River. The company now crosses the Dark River, stepping carefully across the stepping stones to avoid touching the water. Yep. So this is supposed to be happening in Mirkwood, but it's not happening in Mirkwood. That's okay. I can live with it. This also... And I can't remember if it's them saying that they're, that the spiders are up ahead, or that they hear voices. Maybe it's that they hear the voices of the elves and are stepping off of the path, something like that. That's also supposed to be in Mirkwood. This, obviously, in Mirkwood, fighting of the spiders. I'm going to look at that other one, 5 of Swords. Some of these I put them just wherever because, yeah, alerted to the approach of the spiders and attempting to escape. Anyway. So that is in Mirkwood. And this, obviously, spiders is in Mirkwood. This is the elves having captured the dwarves after their suspension by the spiders. Like, there's nothing here about them escaping the spiders and the various things that Bilbo did to help them escape. So there's like, why have some of the repetitions that are in here, and why not include... I mean, the story is essentially not, it's about Bilbo's development, so you would think you would show actually more of some of the situations, not just Bilbo in a static, but what is some more situations. This is the Elven King, the Wood Elf King. This is, I don't know if it's supposed to be somebody guarding. This is the 10 of Cups. Let's take a look. There we go. Yep. The Elven Guard stands on watchful alert at the edge of the forest Mirkwood. It was such a guard as this that captured Thorin Oakenshield. I guess he should be moved up in my sequence. So he's kind of a static figure. He's just the alertness of the dwarves. Excuse me, the alertness of the elves. This is Bilbo scoping out the prison where his friends are being kept. All of the dwarves are in there. So this is the card that never happened. This is the card that's split, and it's the Four of Swords, and it's supposed to be about the dwarves running away from the trolls, which never happened. And I decided to put it here because there's a long suspension here, which would have been a great place to have Bilbo as the Hanged Man, and it fits Bilbo for Four of Swords. He is stopped, and there's quite a period of time where he's having to create a strategy. He's looking kind of desperately for a strategy to get the dwarves out of their imprisonment and out of the kind of enchanted surroundings of the Mirkwood elves, the wood elves. And so this is what he is wanting. This is what's on his mind, is this escape. And he can't figure it out. So he would kind of be, even though this is an elf, or excuse me, not an elf, it's a dwarf. Here, this would be Bilbo sitting and thinking, or standing and thinking in that case, about how he's going to free his friends. So that's where I put that, because it doesn't make sense anywhere else, particularly. This actually didn't really happen either. So, because Bilbo actually was just keeping a hold. He did rest at some point, but he didn't. In the guidebook, it acts as though he pulled them out of the river. No, he didn't pull them out of the river. And it's like, I realize that this was written by somebody who feels that they really know the story, and so why reread it? But why not have somebody else reread it and say, you know, I think you're a little off right here. Or maybe you're totally off over here. So it says, Bilbo attempts to retrieve the first of these barrels in which he and the dwarves managed to escape. And that's not true. What happens is that they end up going all the way down the river. And I can't remember how they do it, but they're not in the river anymore when he gets them out. They're at the lake, and they've been hauled out or something. So part of my being confounded and being a little, again, it's like, why are they doing this? Yes. Anyway, I can't remember, but I mean, they go all the way down, and they're hauled out by the men of Lake Town, and so it's not accurate, but it's okay. And here's one of their painful attempts at including women. Queen of Wands. It's just a Lake Town woman with her apples. They're known for their apples going back and forth in the barrels. You'd think that would be more Queen of Pentacles, but anyway, they've got it as Queen of Wands. So they've added what is otherwise an invisible woman. And so there's the representative of Lake Town. And then there's pretty much, then we just skip Lake Town. That's it. it's her. And then we skip Lake Town and we move on to, well, maybe this is Lake Town, them looking down. The Four of Wands. Is that them looking down? They spend time there. Four of Wands. Okay, so it is supposed to be the long lake. But it looks, you know, according to the book, this is supposed to be them kind of leaving the long lake and traveling up toward Lonely Mountain. But they should be on horseback because they had ponies. Maybe they were only packing ponies. I can't remember. Here they are approaching the back entrance. A bit of a weird picture, but anyway, they're approaching the back entrance of Lonely Mountain. This is an interesting choice for the star. I don't think that there is a star depicted either on the door or anything like that, but that's what they chose to do. So this is the entrance into Lonely Mountain, and there's the thrush. And one thing that I object to was that that's all you get of the thrush, and the thrush is really significant in the things that it does. I would have made the thrush the high priestess, because it makes a ton of sense that the thrush would be the high priestess. But whatever. I use the Ace of Cups. It's like I have to, after doing this comparison, it's like reading a book after you've seen the movie, or seeing the movie directly after you've read the book. It's so hard to then honor the derivative thing, you know? So I put the Ace of Cups as in this position because that's the first thing that Bilbo nabs from the dragon's hoard. And so he sneaks down, he grabs the cup, he takes it up, and that's his proof that he's done his thieving, that he's been where he's been there, done that. And here's Smaug. And this they chose for the world card, which is interesting. And I'm not going to object to it too much. I mean, as far as Smaug is concerned, he's got the world. He's got everything he wants. And he's holding pretty much everybody kind of captive. And then here's Smaug, angry, taking out his anger on the mountain and on Lake Town and all of that. So that's the tower. And here he's doing more of it. So I could have seen some other cards possibly for the tower card. This certainly makes sense for the devil. Although there's a lot of cards that could have been the devil. Like the ring. You know, the ring could have been the devil. The treasure itself, because the devil card is often about temptation. So, or the Arkenstone. You know, there are lots of things that could have been the devil, but there we go. We had Smaug as both the tower and the devil. He's all. That's why he's the world also. Because he's all bad things. Knight of Coins is Bard, the archer, who ends up killing him with the black arrow. At least the arrow's black. The arrow's black. And then the Ten of Wands. I would think this would be the Ten of Swords, but it's the Ten of Wands. Is Smaug dead? And this is also an unfortunate card because it makes it look like he ended up in a tree. I suppose that's because it's Ten of Wands or something. And he shouldn't be. He crashed down into the water town of Lake Town. It's over the lake, and he crashes. He doesn't crash on land at all. He crashes into the town and into the lake and creates a bunch of steam. So what's this? Okay, so in the book there's quite a bit about the destruction of the town and the grief of the people and, you know, the deaths and, you know, them bearing the brunt. You know, it's like if you take the Hanged Man as a card of sacrifice, then you could make Lake Town the Hanged Man, because they ended up having the greatest sacrifice of what the dwarves did and Bilbo did. And, you know, they paid the price. And so I figure, and this is the Queen of Coins, even though many people would look at that broom and say Queen of Wands. And I put her here. So this is another one of those painful attempts to include women. I put her here in terms of cleaning up the mess. After Smog, all that destruction, the women cleaning up the mess. The Arkenstone, or the Ace of Coins. And I put this second. The stuff that happens in the mountain actually happens after what happens to Lake Town. But in the story, he tells what happens to the dwarves first, and then reverts back. And it's like, and while they were in there, all of this happened. So, the Arkenstone. We've now entered the realm of the Arkenstone, and this is Bilbo finding the Arkenstone. And again, this is one of the things, it's just niggling annoyance there. When he found that, none of the other dwarves, they were all hiding back in the hills. Nobody was picking through at that point. Nobody was picking through the treasure. He was on his own. And 6 of Coins, here they are all picking through the treasure. And then again, 4 of Coins, here they are all picking through the treasure. So why? You could have done all of these. There's all of these things that are not depicted here. And you've got 3 things going through the treasure. Okay. Knight of Swords. This is just an anonymous man of Lake Town. And this is when they are going... They don't know that the dwarves are still alive. And they're going up to get the treasure, and the elves have also come down, and they also want their bit of the treasure, and they help the people of Lake Town as well. But they're all converging on the mountain, thinking that they're going to go get the treasure, one way or another. At least a part of it. At least a part of it to compensate for their losses. And here again, this is just them kind of preparing. Is that supposed to be the... You at least have an elf there. Maybe these are supposed to be elves with spears back there. I don't know. But there's at least one elf there. So it's just showing that those 2 groups coming together. This is Bilbo. And again, why 2 of these? Essentially, you've got 2 of these, him with the Arkenstone. And that's totally unnecessary for the 9 of Coins and the Knight of Wands. It's kind of one at night and one at day. And then you have this one also. This is really maybe one of these others and this, or only this. And it's not even the correct person. He never shows the Arkenstone to a dwarf. No, they don't know. He never does that. And of course there's no balance or scales or anything, but you know, this is supposed to be the Justice card. And so let's see what it says in the book here about 9 of Coins, Knight of Wands. Justice is obvious. And what Bilbo does is he gives it to, because Thorin is possessed with his treasure and doesn't want to give, even though it's huge, he doesn't want to give any of it to anybody. And he's paranoid about it. And supposedly there's some kind of aura that the dragon leaves, or that affects them this way, makes them even more possessive than a dwarf would otherwise be. And so Bilbo gives the Arkenstone, which is the one thing that Thorin wants most, gives it to the men and the elves so that they have a bargaining chip. Bilbo reads the map to find the secret door. No. Night. According to Thorin's description, the Arkenstone was like a glove with 1,000 facets. Okay. Bilbo discovers it in the treasure, which we already have a picture of that, and secretly takes it for himself, even then sensing that his agreed-upon share was not intended to include this special gem. Okay, then it says, whilst on night duty, which to me would be this, I'm reading actually the Knight of Wands. On night duty, yes, he goes for a meeting, and then he gives it to Bard and the Elves. Okay, so that's the story for the Knight of Wands. 9 of Coins. Here we see Bilbo as he has just made one of the most difficult decisions of his life, to take the Arkenstone over to Bard. He did this to force, and it's like, yeah, but we already just did that. We've got that in the Knight of Wands. This whole story is in the Knight of Wands. He did this to force Thorin Oakenshield, the true owner of the Arkenstone, into an early compromise with Bard. And again, in neither of these do you see that critical moment. In neither of these do you see him actually giving it to them. You just see him leaving the dwarves to go to the encampment of the people and the elves. All right, and then we have the Justice card. Where are you, Justice? And this shows the critical moment with the wrong person. Bilbo hands over the Arkenstone to Bard. That is not Bard. That is one of the dwarves. Oh, Lordy. And it essentially tells the same story. Bilbo hands over the Arkenstone to Bard and the Elven King in order to avert the deadlock between the besiegers. Bilbo slipped out of the embattlement, which is exactly the same thing they just said for the 9 of Coins. Especially in the face of duress, he felt that this would be the only way to bring an impasse. So they're all essentially the same card. 3 that are essentially the same card. Oh. Okay. So I don't know. I may end up removing one because it doesn't make sense to have 3 that are essentially the same cards depicting exactly the same thing. Okay. So. And. Okay, so this is Temperance, but this is Bolg. B-O-L-G. Bolg. He is the person who is avenging. He's avenging the great goblin who was killed earlier in the story. So that killing of the great goblin enraged everyone, particularly Bolg. And so he's the one who leads all of the wargs and all of the goblins to attack everybody. So again, here it's showing him under the mountain in a cave. But we never know him in a mountain under the cave. We don't know him then. What we know Bolg We know Bolg as showing up while they're supposedly going to bargain with the Arkenstone and get that all figured out. He shows up, as do the dwarves from the north. And we end up with the Battle of the Five Armies, which is Judgment. Battle of the Five Armies. So everybody decides to fight on the same side against the goblins and the wargs. And then, why do I have Gandalf right here? I think I should have him up by the Arkenstone. Probably so. Yep. So, this is another Gandalf. Here he is with the Four of Cups. Let me look it up. Four of Cups. But he disappears pretty much after Bjorn. And so all of this other stuff, Lake Town and Mirkwood and all of this stuff, all occurs, and all of the stuff in Lonely Mountain occurs without Gandalf. And then Gandalf appears again as Bilbo is taking the Arkenstone to the men and the elves, and ends up seeing Gandalf there. And let's just say we see him in a moment of reflection. So I would put him not during the battle, but I would put him before the battle. He's involved with the whole Arkenstone thing and negotiating regarding the Arkenstone. And then they're calling it the Eight of Cups anyway. It's the entrance, and this turns the tide, the entrance of the eagles during the battle of the Five Armies. They're essentially, well, I don't know if you consider the wargs part of the armies. Anyway, they show up with Bjorn. Thorin dies during the battle of the Five Armies, and so that's our Ten of Swords. This, weirdly enough, again, painful attempts to include female figures. This is the Queen of the Wargs. Queen of Swords is the Queen of the Wargs. The Wargs. She is bemoaning the loss of all of her fellow wargs. It's, like I said, it's painful. It's painful stretches here to include any feminine energy, female energy of any kind. King of Coins, in the end, it is the Dane the Second. Dane the Second, who ends up being the Lord of Lonely Mountain and the treasure and all of that stuff. He actually brings the dwarves of the north down when he learns of the death of Smaug, and that Thorin is there. And so it's actually his army, and that of the elves and that of the men, that engages with the wargs and the goblins. Alright, and then we have the Two of Swords. This is Sting and Glamdring, so it's, to me this represents Bilbo and Gandalf. So in the end, it is Bilbo and Gandalf that go together in part of the way. They go with Bjorn as well. And I decided to make it Two of Swords because, to put the Two of Swords here, because it is those two particularly traveling together. And because And Gandalf sees him all the way back to his hobbit hole. And because there's a choice there, you know, the Two of Swords generally being about a choice, and they make a choice not to go through Mirkwood. Not to go through Mirkwood, but to go up and around, and I can't remember exactly what the reason was. But, so there again, there's a choice involved. And they go for essentially what is the lesser of two evils to them. So that's why I put that there. And this King of Cups, according to the guidebook, is supposed to be Bilbo having returned. You know, we don't really... Yes, I guess there is. Way in the background you can see a little... Maybe the little yellow dot there. That's a little window. So he's back at Bag End. And is having to manage his relatives who have sacked his residence, thinking that he is deceased. So, so there you go. An hour and 6 minutes of talking about the Hobbit Tarot and how it's abides by and departs from the actual book of the Hobbit. So now I will have to eventually make some decisions about whether to exclude some cards, like the ridiculous repetition of the Arkenstone thing. I mean, and it's almost, each one is almost exactly the same, even in the text. And exactly how I'm going to use this deck. When I first did a deck interview with it, I'm going to look at that deck interview again as well, but when I first did a deck interview with it, it indicated that it might be something that would work for like shadow work. And maybe it will, but I do have that question about just the book being really so much about earthy things. You know, whether it would work for financial issues, things of that nature. What you do to get to secure things. What is really of value to you? You know, is it your history? Is it treasure? Is it adventure? What are your values? And what are you willing to go through to express those values? What trials will you have to go through in order to express or find or manifest those values, those things that you value? Anyway. Alright, everybody. I'm done with this as a video. Again, I'm going to probably not go into as much detail, but I will probably annotate some of the cards. But I'm going to list the cards on my website in terms of how I see them, and I made some adjustments here, so I'll make some adjustments in what I've already created there. And when I first upload this video, that list will not be public yet because I haven't finished the write-up on it. But eventually it will be, and I will put a link to that blog post in the information box below this video, the description box. Well, anybody who's stuck with me, I'm amazed at you. I'm absolutely amazed. But I hope it will give you some insights into this deck and some things that you might consider or want to leave, just not even worry about, so that you can enjoy and use the deck. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.